I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week, we're going to be at the top of the show giving my Golden Globe nominations reactions, how that'll affect the Oscar race, how it'll affect the Golden Globes, were there any surprises, the very first sort of nominations that are in some way big, that eventually will affect the Oscars, give you my thoughts on those, but still stick around. Once I'm done my reactions, I'm going to be giving my SAG Nominations Predictions. So what I think is going to get nominated, which is going to be happening this Wednesday. And then I'm also going to give you my thoughts on who I think is going to get nominated for the Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars. So a little bit of everything, topic at the front, so predictions, but also, of course, that Oscar content at the very end. But starting off, jumping now into the Golden Globe predictions. I'm just going to use my sheet as of right now, just because I can read them off and see how well I did. Overall, I did very well, but a little over 70%, so I'm confident and happy that my predictions are accurate, and they continue to be. Starting off with Best Film Drama, I've got 4 out of 5 in this category. The nominees were 1917, The Irishman, Joker, Marriage Story, and The Two Popes. I said Little Woman. It turned out to be The Two Popes. So that was sort of a big surprise for me. I thought Little Woman would do much better. Overall, unfortunately, did not do it. So maybe, I always thought Little Woman was more an Oscars movie, but now maybe this tells me that actually it maybe not be as much of a contender as I once thought. So Greta Gerwig for director is falling, screenplay and even picture in a lot of ways is falling. I still expect to get some of those technical categories, including production design and costume design. But frankly, not overall too surprising. Interesting to see 1917 do so well, which I predicted. And The Two Popes was right on the sort of fringe there, so it makes sense in that sense. Best Lead Actor Drama, I also got 4 out of 5 in this category. Christian Bale, Ford v Ferrari, Antonio Banderas, Pain and Glory, Adam Driver, Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix, Joker, and Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes. So I'm really glad I got Christian Bale for Ford v Ferrari. Not a lot of experts were really predicting that. I felt confident that he was the lead and that they'd enjoy that movie. So glad to see I got that there. However, didn't get Robert De Niro. I thought he was going to get nominated. Instead, it went to Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes, which is maybe more of a conventional pick. I think it has to do with the Globes maybe not loving Robert De Niro, the fact that he doesn't campaign, the fact that he's not going to go to all these parties. That's more of a situation for the Globes, a member of 89, where they really appreciate the celebrity factor, whereas the Oscars, the Academy, look with 3,000. So that's, campaigning is much more prevalent in terms of meeting the people and at the Golden Globes, and it is, say, the Oscars. They still really like The Irishman. My assumption is that they sort of don't really like Robert De Niro. I still think he's going to get in at the Oscars because I still think that movie's going to do well at the Oscars. So right now, I don't think this affects him too much. But definitely, I think probably with a boost out of all these people would be Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, definitely making him sort of a lead contender and someone that's a real serious nominee for this category, which is great to see. Best Lead Actress, I also went 4 for 5. So I got Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan for Little Woman, Charlize Theron for Bombshell, and Rene Zellweger for Judy. And I missed Cynthia Erivo for Harriet. So it wasn't unexpected. People were seeing that movie. It sort of just shows us that they have been seeing that movie and they like her. They nominated her song as well, which I did predict. Really, this just sort of negates and destroys, I think, Lupita Nyongo's chances for us. The campaign there really had to start the Globes, and not getting the nomination here really hurts her. And then Best Film Comedy or Musical, I got 4 out of 5 again. Dolemite Is My Name, Jojo Rabbit, Knives Out, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Rocketman. I said Hustlers instead of Knives Out, but in my video I said it's really a toss-up between the two. I thought that, maybe they'd like it a little bit more of a bigger box office hit, but maybe the fact that Knives Out had some more stars, they like that a little bit better. Not too worried about this. Really just shows that Hustlers isn't really an awards movie. I thought maybe it would do well here, but turns out it's probably just going to be J-Lo. Best Lead Actor, Comedy or Musical, also got 4 out of 5 on this one. So Daniel Craig for Knives Out, Roman Griffin Davis for Jojo Rabbit, Leonardo DiCaprio for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Taron Egerton for Rocketman, and Eddie Murphy for Dolemite Is My Name. Also, as expected, I thought maybe Shia LaBeouf could surprise for the Peanut Butter Falcon. At one point, I thought Adam Sandler for Uncut Gems would go in there, but it turned out he was actually campaigning for Best Lead Actor. So kind of disappointed he couldn't slip in and at least get a Golden Globe nomination. Now, this sort of Roman Griffin Davis nomination is a little bit weird because Jojo Rabbit I thought would do well here, but this nomination shows that, they do like Jojo Rabbit, but then it didn't get in a couple other categories, so sort of hard to judge how that did. But congrats to the kid, who I'm sure is really amazing in the movie, and people say that he's really amazing in it. Best Lead Actress, Comedy or Musical, I got 3 out of 5 on this one, so not as good. Awkwafina for The Farewell, Anna de Armas for Knives Out, Beanie Feldstein for Booksmart, Emma Thompson for Late Night, and Cate Blanchett for Where'd You Go, Bernadette. My assumption in the video was that either both the Booksmart girls would get in, or none of them. Turns out one of them did, Beanie Feldstein, which makes a little bit more sense, but I was still a little bit surprised that she got in and Caitlin Dever did not. Cate Blanchett for Where'd You Go, Bernadette. I'm surprised they even saw that movie, but just shows the power of Cate Blanchett in general. And then ultimately, Ana de Armas from Knives Out was sort of on that bubble. I didn't believe in Knives Out, I believed more in Hustlers, therefore, to make my predictions make sense, I did Constance Wu for Hustlers. If you did Knives Out, and then you did Ana de Armas, was sort of the most likely thing. She's great in the movie, so I'm glad she got the nomination. Then we have Best Supporting Actor. I went 5 out of 5 for this one, so did well here with Tom Hanks, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Brad Pitt, and Anthony Hopkins. Not a lot of surprises there. Just shows us that they want both Al Pacino and Joe Pesci in for The Irishman, which is sort of the trend of these past few years. Whether it be in 2017, we had both Emma Stone, and Rachel Weisz from The Favourite, and then the year before that we had, of course, Sam Rockwell and Woody Harrelson from 3 Billboards. So they are starting to nominate 2 people from the same movie if they really like that movie. And The Favourite and 3 Billboards both got acting wins, so maybe this proves something towards The Irishman, and maybe someone like an Al Pacino being a potential threat to someone like Brad Pitt. Then Best Supporting Actress, I went 3 out of 5 for this one, so not good for this one necessarily, but not, I didn't totally whiff. Annette Bening for The Report, Margot Robbie for Bombshell, Jennifer Lopez, Hustlers, Kathy Bates, Richard Jewell, and Laura Dern for Marriage Story. I was really confident Florence Pugh would sneak in. I thought they'd like that movie, that role, sort of the devilish thing. She's definitely sort of going down for me, and Little Woman in general is sort of falling, which is unfortunate because I've heard such great things from Florence, and I can't wait to see that movie. But maybe I still think it's a little bit more of a critics or more of an Oscar movie than it is, say, maybe a Golden Globes movie. But they did like Lady Bird, so it's hard to say necessarily. And then in terms of Kathy Bates or Richard Jewell, this was a movie we knew that the Globes really liked. I'm surprised they actually didn't get more nominations. I wasn't a huge believer in it, and only ended up getting 1 nomination. She was maybe the standout along with Paul Walter Hauser. It just shows that Richard Jewell's in the race, and I think Kathy Bates' chances are skyrocketing for sure. Best Director, got 3 out of 5 here, and really hurt me. Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, Sam Mendes for 1917, Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, and Todd Phillips for Joker, which was sort of the big surprise. Actually, at one point, I thought Todd Phillips was going to get in here. He was in my predictions, yet he was actually one of my Dark Horse predictions in my Dark Horse predictions video. I still believe in Todd Phillips getting this Best Director nomination, and the Globes makes probably the most sense. Ultimately, I thought they would like Marriage Story and give it to Noah Baumbach. I also missed on, who is it here? Oh, Taika Waititi for Jojo Rabbit. I thought that would do very well. Unfortunately, Bong Joon-ho got in. Turns out they really liked Parasite. I wasn't super confident in them liking it. Turns out they really liked it, and that shows really well for Parasite's chances at the Oscars. Best Screenplay, I got 4 out of 5 on this one. So we have Marriage Story, Parasite, The Two Popes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and The Irishman. This was probably the biggest surprise for me here because Jojo Rabbit from Taika Waititi didn't get in. I thought that anywhere Taika Waititi would get in for the screenplay because they like him, because it was so funny, because I expected they liked the movie, but it not getting in for Best Screenplay here is a huge, notch against it. I thought it could very much win this category, so it not getting nominated was a surprise, but Parasite slipping in instead of it, was expected. If I knew Jojo Rabbit wasn't well liked, clearly, I probably wouldn't have predicted it, and these would have been my 5, but still, overall 4 to 5. It really just helps the strengths of the top 3 in my mind being Marriage Story, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and The Irishman. Best Animated, I went for 4 to 5 here. There was Frozen 2, The Lion King, Missing Link, Toy Story 4, and How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. Didn't realize, this is my bad, Lion King was considered an animated movie, and I'm actually surprised that they knew it too, to therefore nominate it. The Globes and the Oscars are a little bit different. I have to look into if Lion King's campaigning for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, if that's technically possible, because it is an animated film, but it's photorealistic. Interesting to see how that will go, not too sure. Best Foreign Film, I went 4 to 5 again. I went with so the nominees were The Farewell, Les Miserables, Pain and Glory, Parasite, and Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I knew that they sort of were campaigning The Farewell for Best Foreign Film here, but actually won't be considered a foreign film at the Oscars, or now an international film at the Oscars. Therefore, I thought they're not going to realize that it's a foreign film, so they're actually going to leave it off. So I didn't do that here, but in the video, I only actually mentioned 4 nominees, and I forgot to mention one of them, so just by mistake. So I did add, ultimately, if you see in my description, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So I did get that, so I would consider that 4 out of 5. And then Motherless Brooklyn, 4 out of 5. In these tech categories, there's always these sort of unexpected surprises, and I'm glad I got 4 out of 5 here. And the sort of surprise, so they were Motherless Brooklyn, Little Woman, Joker, 1917, and Marriage Story. The surprise being Motherless Brooklyn, but maybe not, because this is a score done by Daniel Pemberton, who was nominated for 2 other Golden Globes, for Steve Jobs, his score for Steve Jobs, and then a song he did for Gold, the movie with Matthew McConaughey in 2016. So they really like Daniel Pemberton. However, none of those nominees actually translated at the Oscars, so he's maybe more of a Globes guy than he is an Oscars one. Still glad I got 4 out of 5 though. And then finally, Best Original Song, Beautiful Ghosts, from Cats, I'm Gonna Love Me Again, Rocket Man, Into the Unknown, Frozen 2, Spirit, The Lion King, and Stand Up from Harriet. This was as expected. I wasn't sure which Lion King movie they were going to choose. They ended up with going with Spirit, so it seems like that's a song that they really like, and that's sort of the one that they're going to go for. So those chances for Best Original Song at the Oscars are definitely rising. I think I'm going to throw that in my nominees. However, don't be 100% sure, because they didn't nominate Toy Story 4, which was kind of expected, because for Toy Story 3, they didn't nominate the song, yet that song ended up winning at the Oscars. So not exactly, totally getting out. Toy Story 4 is not totally out of the race for Best Original Song. It could still get in at the Oscars, so watch out for that. And then Cats, we thought Cats was going to be this beloved thing, and, it seems like a perfect Globes movie. James Corden for Best Supporting Actor. Turns out not. They saw the movie, maybe didn't like it enough to get the sort of momentum maybe it needed, but ultimately did get this a Best Original Song nominee. And then the major takeaways just being that Joker, getting that Todd Phillips director nomination is huge. It has a chance to win the Globes, and therefore, I don't think Todd Phillips will ultimately get in at the Oscars, but he's definitely a threat. You have to watch out for him, and the movie in general is beloved. Get out of this internet sort of criticism. Look at the people on the ground. Look at the facts. People like Joker. It's a $1 billion movie. I've been confident. I have been saying it. I said Todd Phillips was a dark horse. I believe in Joaquin Phoenix getting that win, but it could even slip in and maybe a Best Adapted Screenplay, or maybe some of these other technical categories like a production design. And it got in for Best Score, so it is a beloved movie. Little Woman really got hurt, that one nomination, not even a screenplay or Florence Pugh. Saoirse Ronan did get in, but missing picture and even missing Greta Gerwig, that really hurts that film, and I'm a little bit worried about it now for the Oscars. Richard Jewell seemingly enters the award race. Maybe Kathy Bates slips in. I wouldn't be surprised in that Best Supporting Actress, where I think it's still sort of up for grabs. And then JoJo is maybe not as strong as we thought. This was a movie that I thought would do very well at the Globes and really gain a lot of momentum. It's a TIFF People's Choice Award, makes a lot of sense, right? Maybe not. Still it could maybe surprise with the win, with no director nomination and no even screenplay nomination. I think that ultimately really hurts that movie. And even something like a Scarlett Johansson missing out, where that's a film that if it was really like Scarlett Johansson, I think would have got in, but instead they went for a little bit more of a different pick, for example, Kathy Bates, Richard Jewell. And then ultimately Irishman, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, getting them, and Marriage Story, really probably the sort of 3 favorites, but Noah Baumbach not getting in for Marriage Story for Best Director hurts it. So I still think that The Irishman definitely could win here. My predictions as of right now probably are still Marriage Story getting, say, a Laura Dern, and then getting the picture, and then maybe Irishman goes to Martin Scorsese for Best Director, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood gets Best Original Screenplay. Spread out the love there. Not too sure yet, but stay tuned to the channel to have your up-to-date Oscar and Golden Globe updates. Now, so jumping into the SAG Nominations Predictions. The SAGs are going to be happening this Wednesday, so I'm going to be nominating just all different categories, including the stunt ensembles. And SAG, if you don't know, the Screen Actors Guild Award, is really telling a lot of times for the Best Picture. They've had a great sort of streak up until a couple of years ago. I think a film to win Best Picture that was not nominated for a SAG acting ensemble was Braveheart in '95, but then it happened in 2017 with The Shape of Water, and then it happened again last year with Green Book. So the stat is starting to fall apart a little bit, although for many years, if you got into the acting ensemble, that was really important for your chances, because it means you have the strength of the acting branch, which is the largest branch of the Academy, which means you're probably getting a lot of votes and people like your film in general. So that was really important. So now maybe less so. It definitely helps, you know, oftentimes I look at whatever the SAG winners for the acting categories and maybe just put them for my Oscars. Of course, sometimes they don't translate, but I do sort of look at that in a lot of ways because it's the acting branch, and the acting branch is the largest branch, so oftentimes they're going to reward them for the Oscars. Just a direct correlation. So, but the big sort of award of the night, I guess you would say, was Best Ensemble, which really helps certain films' chances. So if you win SAG Ensemble and then you win, you know, say a BAFTA or you win a DGA, those things would really help you in terms of your chances of maybe winning Best Picture. But the problem is that every year there's always a split. Green Book wins PGA, and I guess, what was it last year who won? Oh, Black Panther, I believe, won Best Ensemble. So there's sort of a split that's sort of hard to say. So winning SAG is not crucially important. You know, Hidden Figures won before and that didn't win, but what is important is getting that nomination. So my front runner right now is going to be The Irishman. This is just a great ensemble because the big heavy hitters, I mean, you have Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, those are two of the maybe arguably the best actors of all time. You have sort of Martin Scorsese, that factor of his actors that he's used before, going back to the 70s with Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel, and then Joe Pesci with Casino and Raging Bull. And then, of course, just the incredible, you know, even comedians that they use, whether it be Jim Norton or Sebastian Maniscalco, that show up and do a little something. There's just so much, so many different Italian-American actors. There's just the all-star sort of cast of them. The same way we would see like a Hidden Figures or a Black Panther, where we have so many great African-American actors all in one movie. This is sort of the same thing with Italian-American actors, and really just some legendary heavyweights of the movie industry. So I think, you know, this was sort of probably that sentimental pick, and so many people were inspired by acting by some of the people in this movie. So while it's very much a male-centric movie, I mean, there's of course some like Anna Paquin who's caught up in some controversy. I still think that it will get the nomination because it's the amount of respect that these actors have, especially in their older age. Next pick is going to be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is, I guess, the sort of obvious one. I mean, 90% of SAG seemingly was in this movie. There's so many great people, and there's so many people in sort of small parts. Like, I remember watching the movie and being like, hey, is that Clifton Collins Jr.? And he doesn't say a word. They don't mention, he's not even a character. He's like an extra on this fake TV show. It's insane. Of course, you have, you know, the Manson family and all the different sort of people there, whether it be Lena Dunham or Maya Hawke, and then so those are sort of, you know, and then Bruce Dern eventually shows up at Spawn Ranch. So you have those sort of weird sort of character elements, and then of course the big three in Margot Robbie, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Brad Pitt, and then even someone like Al Pacino shows up and knocks it out of the park. I mean, there's just, it's like, because it's a Hollywood movie, there are so many great Hollywood players to just show up, you know, chew the scenery for a bit and then walk out. It's just one of those movies where it's just an incredible ensemble cast. It's definitely going to get the nomination. Then we have Little Women, another great ensemble cast, and there are some really great players. You know, Lady Bird, for example, was nominated here. So they do like Greta Gerwig and her films. And then there's sort of this really great balance that I found where there's old Hollywood in, well, I mean, not old Hollywood, but older, you know, Hollywood in terms of Meryl Streep and Laura Dern, and then sort of also the future in Timothée Chalamet and Saoirse Ronan and Florence Pugh and Emma Watson. So there's sort of these both good, young and old. It's got an incredible cast. There's going to be multiple nominations expected for all of these films, and so that really helps it, an ensemble film, if you get other multiple nominations. So there's that, where there's two sort of different mentalities. I think that most of the time, if you get multiple nominations, you get two supporting actor and a lead actor, for example, for The Irishman. You're most likely to get Best Ensemble because it shows that they like the movie. Or they go for something like Black Panther, where who do we nominate? Everyone was so good. There was such a great team effort. Boom, you put it in Best Ensemble. But most of the time, there's usually an acting link in a lot of ways, I think. But SAG Ensemble also can be very weird sometimes. Something like The Big Sick can show up and get nominated. So there's always sort of surprises that you have to keep in mind. But right now my list is kind of boring because my fourth pick is going to go to A Marriage Story, another movie with expecting multiple nominations. You have the sort of two lead actors who are so great and so emotional, but then you have all the supporting, whether it be Ray Liotta or Laura Dern or Alan Alda, and then some of the even, you know, the smaller players, really, that's what you're looking for in an ensemble. You have the great sort of leads, people that you resonate to, and then sort of these small people that just show up for a little bit and do their parts and are really believable and are memorable and have memorable roles. And not necessarily, it's not always necessarily the most amount of people. If you look at something like The Big Sick, you're really only looking at Camille Nanjiani, Zoe Kazan, Holly Hunter, and Ray Romano as sort of the four. And then, of course, there's smaller players. But something like a Black Panther, it's everybody. There's so many actors. But there are some slots where it's only a couple actors that you really sort of resonate to and appreciate. And I think Marriage Story has those two leads, but has sort of the trilogy of divorce lawyers and Ray Liotta, Laura Dern, and Elda Alda that sort of support it so nicely. And then sort of the family, and then the theater company, and the son, Henry, who does a good job, I thought. All really important. And then my final pick, like I said, the SAGs do sort of go for a little bit of a fun element sometimes. My final pick is going to go to Hustlers. I think that we've seen in previous years, whether it be something like Hidden Figures or Lady Bird, these all-female casts or female ensembles, which I think will also help Little Women, do well here. I think, the SAGs do have quite a bit. It's pretty 50-50 versus, something like cinematographers. It's very much male-driven versus the actors is pretty much 50-50, so a lot of times you'll have The Irishman, which is this all sort of male cast, which maybe appeals to more of the men in the academy, or that branch, excuse me, and then sort of something like a Little Women or Hustlers, the sort of fierce crime drama with this, female empowerment kind of a message in a certain way. And then, of course, you have just the whole crew. It's kind of like a crew movie. We got to get this person, and this is the scheme, and this is what we're doing. So I think the Ronan nominations, everyone there, whether it be, small bit parts like Cardi B or just the brilliance that is Jennifer Lopez in this movie. So those are my 5 nominees for Best Ensemble. That's the big category. Now I'm going to jump over into some of the acting categories. Now, I know we just talked about the Globes, but it is notable that the nomination of the SAGs voting has closed before the Golden Globe came out. Nominations came out, so it's not going to necessarily affect it, the nominations as much. So it's going to be similar sort of conventional wisdom with certain elements added. So like I said, I've been talking about them for a while. I'm not going to go into too much depth. Just sort of a quick thing. My first one, of course, is going to be Renee Zellweger. So for Best Lead Actress, I'm going to go with Renee Zellweger for Judy. What can I say? She sings, she plays a real life person, and just super, it just seems like it's maybe her year. And I think that, the SAGs do sort of buy into narratives, whether it be something like A Glenn Close to the Wife. Renee sort of fits that mold, so don't worry about that. Charlize Theron for Bombshell is sort of, yes, you're sympathizing with a Fox News anchor, which most of Hollywood is seemingly left-wing, and Fox News is a right-wing news network. That being said, she transforms so much, and I think people are so impressive that, wow, the real life person aspect always helps with the movie. Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, I think, she has done well in other movies, and she's been nominated every time. She's been nominated at the SAGs, every time she's been nominated at the Oscars. I expect her to get nominated at the Oscars, therefore I'll expect her to get nominated at SAG. I think they like Little Women. She's sort of the lead character of it. They like her so much. She's a great young actress. She's the future. Why not? Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story. Powerful, emotional performance, does so much. Definitely going to be her year, I think. We'll talk about her maybe a little bit later. And then my final pick. I think that SAGs always sort of go with their own way. There's very much performance driven. They don't even care if a movie is good or even if they like the movie. It's always about the performances. And Lupita has been beloved in 12 Years a Slave years. And she does so much in this movie, and I think they'll just appreciate her because it's just a really an exciting role that I think the actors would really respond to, because you can play 2 characters and 2 different sort of ways, and completely different and really transformative in a sort of a different way, not in a real life person way, but in sort of a monster way, one that's very vulnerable, but one that's a physical manifestation of like whatever you sort of metaphors you want to put onto it. But it's just an incredible performance. She's so great in that movie. And the image you remember is of her, the poster, with the eyes, just like those sort of Get Out eyes, that sort of imagery that we know. I think that sort of would be sort of the surprise. I think it could also go to something like Elizabeth Moss for Her Smell, something that's just over the top and dramatic and out there and vulnerable. But I think more people have seen Us, so I'm going to go with Lupita there. Best Lead Actor, I'm going to go with Joker, Joaquin Phoenix. I think a lot of the actors will sort of think like, I wonder what mindset he got into that. Oftentimes, sort of rumor, which is not true, but people think that Heath Ledger, part of what attributed to his suicide was that he played the Joker and couldn't sort of get out of it. That's not true from everything we know. It's false rumor, but I still think that rumor persists. And I think some people be like, wow, I wonder what kind of a place you have to go to, what depths you have to go to into an actor that's really sort of interesting for them. And I think actors always secretly want to play evil or do a serial killer role. I think that really attracts them. So Joaquin Phoenix for Joker, lock, in my opinion. Adam Driver for Marriage Story. This one could be one they really appreciate, because I think actors appreciate the amount of range he's done, the amount of great directors he's worked with, and he's only 35, and he has doing a lot of physical stuff here, similar to Joaquin, but a little bit more subtle in the amount of physical stuff he's doing here, as well as the over the top, emotional scenes and the funny scenes. And he has this great singing moment. He does it all in this movie, so definite nomination. Not sure about the win just yet, but he should get nominated here. Robert De Niro for The Irishman. Even though the SAGs have only been around for 20 years, so they haven't even nominated Robert De Niro. So I think they should nominate him here. Out of all my nominees, it's the only real quiet one, so it will stand out. If they like the movie, they should like Robert De Niro. He's a legend. People respect him so much. He's never been nominated for a SAG. Boom, give him a nomination. Leonardo DiCaprio for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Even though he's sort of falling in comparison to Brad, I think that he still is playing an actor in this movie. He's still beloved. He's still Leonardo DiCaprio. He's incredible in every movie he does. And in this movie, he plays an actor, right? And the actors should like actors. And he very much he talks about acting in the movie, in the process, and sort of working on set. I think this is sort of a very relatable thing to actors, and that should at least get him the nomination. And then my final pick is actually going to go to Eddie Murphy for Dolemite Is My Name. I think that SAGs in certain ways can be populist, but in certain ways can be sort of elitist in a sense. And I think Antonio Banderas, I'm not sure if that movie's been seen enough to really give him the push, even though he's charming. And, I think because, if you don't know, so SAG, Screen Actors Guild, has also a couple of years ago joined with AFTRA, which involves not only actors but like TV personalities and radio hosts, that sort of union. It's called SAG-AFTRA, so it really just expands it, makes it a little bit more populist. So Dolemite Is My Name is a little bit more of a popular movie. It's about, an actor, filmmaker that's just trying it, that I think will very much relate to an actor's experience. He heard no about a million times, and he said, screw it, I'm going to do it myself. And I think actors really sort of appreciate that drive and that persistence, because they often drive for 2 hours and then hear no and have to drive 2 hours back. It's brutal in that sense. But I think that will sort of relate to people. I think Eddie will get the push and get that SAG nomination. Now, Best Supporting Actor. My frontrunner is still Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Classic movie star role. Why not give it to Brad? He's just been incredible for so many years, and he plays a stuntman, yes. But I think people will like the movie enough, and right now this just seems to be a lock. This seems to be his year. Finally give Brad the Oscar. Although I think he does have an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave, but, an acting Oscar. We'll go with Al Pacino for The Irishman. He does so much. He's over the top. He plays a real-life character in Jimmy Hoffa. He's screaming, he's yelling, he's doing exactly what you want Al Pacino to do. And, has a really great arc in the movie, I think. Then we have Tom Hanks for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, of course, playing this real-life person. People like Hanks a lot. He's very charismatic. There's some really great scenes in this movie where it's just him and the journalist, and they're sort of back and forth. It's the emotional heart of the movie, and it's his acting and his sort of belief in what he's saying, the way he delivers his dialogue and his slow pace of the words. Really beautiful stuff here. And then also go with Joe Pesci for The Irishman. People want to see Joe Pesci act. He hasn't been around in a while. People really appreciate him, and he's doing something completely different. He's not the loose cannon over the top. He's dialed back. He's reserved. He's very much looking at acting with his eyes, and not these over the top gestures that he may be known for in something like A Home Alone. Definitely, I think people respect Joe Pesci here. And then Anthony Hopkins. This category has been really boring for me because I just feel so strongly in those five. There's always a Willem Dafoe for Lighthouse, which could pick up something, and they do like him, Florida Project, At Attorney's Gate. But I just think ultimately, maybe Willem Dafoe's been getting a lot of love recently, and Anthony Hopkins is not. He's sort of seen as this legendary thespian. The Two Popes is very much an acting-focused movie. No, he's kind of eccentric in the movie, so I'm going to go with Anthony Hopkins in that final slot. Then Best Supporting Actress, going to go with Laura Dern, just because she's, I think, the epitome of what these actresses want to aspire to in a lot of ways. She is someone who started off working with all these great directors. She never really relied on her sexuality to express her things. She's very much an intellect. She's been working well into her older age, which some actors, actresses in particular, really have a hard time with that, and she's sort of been able to do that. She never did plastic surgery and was worried about her look. She sort of did herself and was true to her acting. And the next runner-up is a pop star in Jennifer Lopez for Hustlers, which is my next pick. I just don't think she's going to win because, yes, they may appreciate her, but she's not an actress. Laura Dern is an actress. She's the epitome of what I think a lot of actresses want to strive to in Jennifer Lopez. There may be a little bit of a scaredness that, oh, she's coming in, she's going to take her job. Actors want to say, acting is its own thing. You can't be a pop star and come in and act, even though Jennifer Lopez has been around since the 90s, 98, without out of sight. But I still think they'll still sort of hold on to, no, acting is a sacred thing. You have to dedicate your life to it. Give it to Laura Dern. But I still think Jennifer Lopez will get nominated. Then we'll have Florence Pugh for Little Women. I think she gets in because I think this is a role that people would really just love. I think actresses really want to do. It's devilish. It's great. She does so much. She sympathizes, but there's a back and forth. She's sort of an up-and-comer. I think this is just a role that actresses and actors really want, and the type of role that they want, which I think will give it to her for Florence Pugh. And then we have Margot Robbie for Bombshell, of course, the up-and-comer. They liked her in I, Tonya. She does so much. There's some really emotional acting scenes, the crying scenes. You watch the crying scenes, and I think as an actor, you go, wow, that must have been really difficult. Let's give her the nomination. And then we also finally have my final slot. I'm going to go with Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit. I think, with something like an Emily Blunt last year, who got 2 nominations, SAGs don't necessarily shy away from that. And Emily Blunt won last year for A Quiet Place. I think Scarlett Johansson will ultimately, this is sort of her year. I think that they like Jojo Rabbit. They very much could get in for Best Ensemble. I think they sort of slip her in here. And maybe hurts Zhao Shushen's chance at the Oscars. And people think, oh, what about Scarlett? Will she get nominated twice? I don't think that'll happen at the Oscars. I think they'll go for Zhao Shushen for The Farewell at the Oscars. But right now at the SAGs, I'm not too confident at her because people just don't know her as well. She's a new actress. So I think that will hurt her. And then we'll go into Best Stunt Ensemble. Now my first pick is going to go for Avengers Endgame. This is a category that we never really know so much about because, it's kind of weird. You think, oh, John Wick, right? That's going to get nominated. Well, no, the first 2 weren't nominated. Oh, what about maybe a Fast and Furious movie? None of them have been nominated except for Furious 7. So it's like, oh, okay. But the only consistency really is that their Marvel movies get nominated. So that's why I'm going to go with Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel. Endgame has the incredible cast. It's the highest grossing movie of the year. Give it something, right? Similar to the nominated Infinity War. Captain Marvel has that feminist aspect that really helps something like Wonder Woman, which won Best Ensemble a couple of years ago. I'm going to go with 1917 as well. This is the war factor. Both Dunkirk and Hacksaw Ridge got nominated here. So that's notable. So I think 1917, the precision that was required from the stunt team to be so perfect and not to mess anything up and do it on the fly was I'm sure, really impressive. I'm going to still go with Hobbs and Shaw. They like the Fast and Furious series enough to give it Furious 7. I think Idris Elba, they really like. It's just, the movie's just one action set piece after another. Why not? And my final thought's going to go to Ford v Ferrari. Not too sure if people will recognize the stunts, but there's some great driving, some really exhilarating driving, and they do like sort of the driving stunts, like they nominated Baby Driver before. So that's sort of the predictions for those. Now we're just jumping over into the best documentary feature predictions. My front runner is going to be American Factory. So this right now for me is the Netflix factor that's really pushing this movie. Netflix has been historically really great. Even if they're really pushing this year for getting a feature thing, they've always done well at the documentary category section. As a matter of fact, they were nominated once in 2014, once in 2015, twice in 2016, once in 2017, twice in 2018, weren't nominated in 2019, so they missed last year, but I think they're going to go back to the track again. They've been on just an incredible roll. It was weird to see them not get nominated last year, but this year they have a couple good films that should get in. But I really think the lead is American Factory. They've won it before with Icarus. They've won a couple of documentary shorts as well. It's very much a humanist film in the sense that it's about globalism and international perspective, so it's going to appeal to many people, but it has the American factor and the Chinese factor, and there's a trade war going on. It's very much current. This sort of idea of losing jobs to automation, things like that, have been relevant since, the 80s. So I think that there's a political element to it. There's also sort of a humanist and a great sort of setup for a documentary, and it's on Netflix, so it's easy to watch. This is, I think, a definite nomination. My next book is going to be Apollo 11, the space drama, a documentary that I don't think it's going to win because I think it's a little bit too abstract for a lot of people because it's not a traditional documentary. It's just a bunch of footage cut together into a certain story. Now there's unique storytelling elements that they do and challenges that, of course, that comes to really explain the story to your audience without having a guy sit down and go, oh yes, I remember the Apollo 11 mission and this is what happened, and telling their experiences like a normal documentary. So in a lot of ways, people saw this at IMAX. This was the biggest documentary hit of the year. So there's the incredible sort of visual aspect to it. People generally like the space movies. Historically, I mean, there's always sort of a space movie that gets nominated for some sort of Oscar. So this sort of would fit that narrative this year, I would say. And people just love, especially Americans, love that time period in history, and Apollo 11 is the pinnacle of it all. I think maybe it's too abstract to win, but I still think people will respect it, and the visuals are just so amazing that it's unlike anything real documentary you've seen before, except, I don't know, there's other documentaries, but probably that it is different compared to the traditional sense. My next pick is going to go to One Child Nation. This is maybe the most critically acclaimed out of all the documentaries. It's a documentary about China's one-child policy and sort of the communist aspects of that, and the victims, I guess you maybe even say, of that program, and how forceful it was done, and even the moral aspect of, well, maybe that's what needs to be done. China has a population of 1 billion. If you have 2 kids or 3 kids, you're tripling that has serious effects to the world. There is some sort of debate, but it's political. It's also humanist, similar to American Factory, distributed by Amazon Studios. So that is a factor as well. I mentioned Apollo 11 is CNN, which has done well before, or at least in the conversation. And One Child Nation, Amazon, similar to the Netflix factor. You'll be able to watch it. It'll be in your Prime Video pop-up or whatever. So watch out for One Child Nation, critically acclaimed, political, humanist, should get in. My next pick is going to be Biggest Little Farm from Neon, who also does well in the Oscars in general. Another sort of hit, I believe. It was Apollo 11, Pavarotti, Amazing Grace, and Biggest Little Farm. So it made the top 5. This wasn't a huge year like last year, which was really a big year for documentaries. It was just an okay year, but this one it's sort of the counter aspect to all the other political movies that we often see here, the sort of downy, depressing ones. Well, this does have an environmental message. It definitely involves these people and their experiences. Owning and operating a farm is my understanding. I haven't seen it yet, but from what I understand, it is very kind of uplifting and sort of maybe a little more happy than, say, the darkness of my next pick, For Sama, which is the token Syrian Middle Eastern documentary that's showing the sort of journalistic war-torn elements and showing the real-life people that are affecting this. It's probably a heavy movie. It's really critically acclaimed. It's been nominated for a couple of documentary awards at the European Film Awards. So that's something that we want to keep an eye out for, and I think that it's critically acclaimed and sort of fits into that City of Ghosts kind of model that we've seen, White Helmets model that we've seen do well at the Oscars. I think should get nominated here at the Globes, but that final slot can really go to anything because there's so many documentaries that have been submitted. You never really know which ones are really, really beloved, and we always see surprises. Something like, well, actually reminds me of my possible contenders going into it. Maradona. This is about Diego Maradona, the soccer player. And most importantly, it's actually from Asif Kapadia, who is a popular documentarian. He did Senna, which was nominated for the Oscar, I believe. He also did Amy, which won the Oscar. However, both those movies were not nominated at the Golden Globes. For some reason, they have a bias against him. The movie hasn't been as critically acclaimed as the other two, so probably not going to get the nomination. And then another possible contender is either Pavarotti, which I've mentioned, or Ron Howard's film, which maybe would push him. It's maybe a little bit more of... Well, I guess it makes sense for the Globes. Well, not the Globes, excuse me. It makes sense for the Oscars because it is Ron Howard, but I'm not sure if it wasn't necessarily critically acclaimed as much, but he has been campaigning, which would help it. And then we also have The Cave, which is PBS, who is a company that we haven't talked about that does sort of push some of these films. But the thing is, for me, I think they're sort of I believe it's PBS, but I'm pretty sure For Some is also PBS, so I think they're going to push for that instead because it fits a little bit more of the Oscar mold. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Best Documentary Feature, my SAG Nominations Predictions. Let me know some of your thoughts on the Golden Globe nominations, anything that surprised you. Give me your predictions for the SAG nominations. I'd love to hear that. That's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.